Myself, Ethan, and I work as a lead technician for a specialized industrial firm where we handle heavy machinery repairs. Now, because parts are expensive and often custom ordered, our old system was simple. I'd email my manager, "Hey, we need a $4,000 hydraulic seal." He'd reply, "Approved," and I'd order it. Quick, efficient, and everyone was happy. Enter Kevin. Kevin is a new efficiency consultant turned director of operations. Kevin thinks email is for lazy people and decided that to curb unauthorized spending, every single requisition, regardless of cost, now requires a physical, ink on paper signature on a specific Form 402, hand delivered to his office. I told Kevin this was a bad idea because we are a high volume shop. On a busy Monday, I might order 40 different items ranging from $5 bolts to $10,000 engines. Kevin's response, "If it's not signed by me in person, the company isn't paying for it. No exceptions. I don't care if it's a nickel or a grand. I want to see every request that crosses your desk." I realized Kevin didn't quite grasp what every request meant. I usually batch my orders or handle the small stuff, washers, lubricants, safety goggles, through a general shop fund, but not anymore. Monday morning comes, instead of batching my needs into one list, I treated every single individual component as a separate requisition. Need 10 specific bolts? That's one form. Need a bottle of degreaser? That's a form. Need a replacement light bulb for the break room? Form. By 10 a.m., I had a stack of 64 individual forms. I walked into Kevin's office. He was on a conference call. I waited, and when he hung up, I laid the stack down. "Kevin, what is this?" "Me? The requisitions for the morning. You said you wanted to see every request. I need these signed so I can get the shop running." It took him 20 minutes to sign them all because he insisted on reading each one. By the time he finished, I was back with 15 more. By Tuesday, he was visibly annoyed, and by Wednesday, the fallout began. Because I was spending half my day walking back and forth to his office and waiting for him to finish meetings to get signatures, the actual repair work slowed to a crawl. 3 major clients called to ask why their machines weren't ready. The breaking point was the emergency overnight. A local plant had a massive failure, and we needed a $12 O-ring to fix a $200,000 pump. It was around 4:45 p.m. Kevin had already headed out for a networking dinner. Now, under the old rules, I just buy it and get reimbursed. But under Kevin's no exceptions rule, I couldn't. I told the client, "I'm sorry, I don't have authorization to purchase the part until it's physically signed off by the director." The client was furious. They called the CEO. The CEO called Kevin at his dinner. Kevin told the CEO he'd handle it in the morning. The CEO told Kevin to get his behind back to the office. Kevin had to drive 45 minutes back to the office in his suit just to sign a single piece of paper for a $12 part. The next morning, a company-wide memo went out. Digital approvals via email are reinstated for all items under $5,000. Kevin doesn't look at me anymore when I walk past his office. I still make sure to bring him a physical form for anything over $5,001, and I always make sure to wait until he's right in the middle of a very important lunch. After all, he wanted to see every request. So, I work as a courier for a local furniture and hardware supplier. Most of the time, it is pretty chill, but occasionally you get that one customer who thinks being a jerk is a personality trait. Last Thursday, I had a delivery for a guy who ordered a bunch of heavy outdoor decking material. The address on the invoice was for an old industrial park on the edge of town that is mostly abandoned warehouses and empty lots. I called him when I was about 10 minutes out just to confirm where exactly he wanted the pallet dropped, because the GPS was pointing to a literally gated-off gravel pit. The second he picked up, he started screaming. He told me I am paid to drive, not to ask stupid questions, and that the address in the system is there for a reason. I tried to explain that it looks like a construction site or an old dump, but he cut me off and said he is a busy man and doesn't have time to hold my hand. He literally told me, and I quote, "Just put it exactly where the paperwork says and stop bothering me or I will call your manager." All right then, I'm a man of my word. I drove to the exact coordinates on the shipping manifest. It was a rusted gate in front of a completely empty dirt lot with a sign that said private property, keep out. There was nobody there and no building in sight. I checked my paperwork again, and the address was 100% correct according to the system. I unloaded the entire pallet of high-end cedar decking right there in the dirt, leaned it against the fence, and took a photo for the delivery confirmation.
About 3 hours later, my boss calls me into the office. Apparently, the guy meant to put in his home address, which was on the other side of the city, but he had used his old business billing address by mistake. He was livid because when he finally drove out there to check, most of the wood had already been picked over by people driving by or was just sitting in the mud. He tried to claim I should have known it was a mistake. My boss just pulled up the recorded call where the guy told me to stop asking questions and put it exactly where the paperwork said. The guy had to pay for a whole new order because he signed off on the delivery terms. He didn't say a word when I saw him at the warehouse later to pick up the new stuff himself.
I've been handling this annual event for years. I know the process, the information we need from guests, when to handle their visas, and how to plan the event flow down to the minute. My boss, on the other hand, mostly knows how to look like he does. Last year's event was a mess, so this time I came prepared. I built a shared Excel sheet for the committee. It was clean, structured, everything in one place. Guest names, designations, dietary restrictions, flight details, fully tabulated, filterable, easy to manage. The idea was simple. Input once guests have submitted their RSVP via Google form, and we're set. At some point, my boss saw the sheet. He deleted it. No heads up, no informing anything BTW, just gone. Instead, he created a new tab linking directly to the raw Google form responses. During a progress meeting, I mentioned, politely, that the working sheet had disappeared. That's when he admitted to deleting it because his version was more automated. Just use the form responses and add columns as needed. In hindsight, it made sense, but not for this kind of event. It was just way more complicated. Guests submit multiple responses when details change. Some cancel, some bring plus ones with completely different flights and dietary needs. It gets messy fast. I raised these concerns, especially since I'd be the one managing it anyway. Despite me explaining multiple times that it's going to be very inefficient, he insisted his way was better. All right then, I'll comply. Every bit of information went exactly where his form responses allowed it to go. No extra structuring, no cleanup. Duplicate RSVPs, highlighted in red, no consolidation. Different flight details in one submission, all 4 flights crammed into a single cell. Dietary restrictions for multiple guests, all dumped together. Good luck figuring out who's vegan and who has a nut allergy. Special requests, full essay pasted in one cell, untouched. I followed his way exactly. Eventually, he realized the sheet was useless, couldn't filter anything properly, couldn't find what he needed, and definitely couldn't present it proudly to management to take credit for someone else's work. Meanwhile, I quietly rebuilt my original Excel on my personal drive so my actual work wasn't affected. But not gonna lie, was tough trying to switch tabs like a ninja when he's micromanaging at my desk. This happened a couple years ago. I have a job in entertainment software. The company I work for is pretty large, but the specific team I'm on is pretty small. I am not the team lead. I have worked here for many years and have been offered the position of team lead several times, but keep turning it down because I hate telling people what to do and don't want to go to more meetings. I happen to have a more technical background than the other people on my team, and I developed a reputation as the guy you turn to when you need to solve the really big, complicated problems. The project managers know this and assign tasks accordingly. In fact, they pretty much only bother assigning individual tasks to me. The rest of the tasks for my team go in a bucket for my teammates, including the team lead, to assign to themselves as they see fit. I can grab from the bucket too, but it's generally assumed that I'll prioritize the stuff that's assigned to me. There are far more tasks that take a few minutes than ones that take a few days, but most of the ones on the deep end of that scale are mine. This arrangement is the PM's call. It's out of the lead's hands. It's come up a few times that maybe I should be organized differently than the rest of the team for this reason, but I've never really followed up on that because I enjoy my job the way it is just fine. I'm a head down, take care of my shit, mind my own business kind of guy. Task assignment is handled by some janky software. Each task has an expected time to completion, but the minimum time is 1 day. The majority of the tasks in my team's bucket take less than an hour for most people. Because of this, the time budget for the tasks in the task bucket is pretty bloated.
The time budget for the tasks assigned specifically to me is less bloated because most of my tasks are large enough to have more than one day assigned to them. I still accomplish much more than one day of task per day on average because I'm very good at my job. Everyone just knows to ignore the software's estimate for my team in general. It's more a list of stuff for us to do and less a measure of our productivity. A month and a half before the story takes place, the team lost its lead. I was asked again if I wanted to be the lead, which I again declined. Another member of the team, who I'll call Bill, was promoted to the position. Bill is not the most technical guy, which is fine, but he's also kind of insecure about the fact that he has little to say in what I'm working on, despite being my lead on paper. I don't really care who the team lead is, since most of my assignments come straight from the PMs anyway. In the month after Bill became lead, I completed 20 tasks, which was much more than a month's work according to the task management software. After that, I had a 2-week vacation that I had scheduled almost a year in advance. First thing Monday morning when I got back, Bill called me into a one-on-one. He started off by expressing that the task management software does a bad job of telling us how on schedule we are. I agreed. Then he pulled up a spreadsheet he made where he listed every individual task assigned to our team since he became lead, which seems redundant since the task management software already has that, but his had 2 key differences. There was no time listed for each task, and it kept a running tally of the number of tasks completed by each team member at the top. Bill points to the 150 tasks on his own tally and the 20 on mine. He says, "I understand I've just gotten back from vacation and have only worked on these tasks for a month compared to his month and a half, but I've got to get those numbers up." I tried to explain that the type of tasks that I get tend to take longer. I even pointed out some of the specific tasks that were assigned to me and asked if he wanted to help with those if we finished all of the small tasks early. No, he admitted, he wouldn't know where to start with those. But look, he said, he completed 150 days of tasks, and the expected time to completion had only gone up since more tasks had come in. We're not going to run out of small tasks, especially if I'm not pulling my weight. I need to do at least 3 tasks a day or I'd get put on a PIP. It was at that point that I start actually looking at the tasks that he'd completed, and my first thought is, you've had a month and a half and you've only done 150 of these? These are 5-minute jobs. What's more, the other members of the team are around the 70 to 120 range, but they have more tasks that seem like they'd take a few hours to complete. Even worse, if you list the tasks alphabetically, like the bucket does, you can see that he's taken groups of small ones from the list and skipped any of the larger ones. It's almost like Bill has been grabbing the easiest, fastest tasks from the bucket and then claiming that means he's more productive. Well, if Bill wants to claim that success is measured in how many tasks like this someone can do, he shouldn't have brought these rookie numbers. So here's where the malicious compliance begins. Immediately after the meeting, I scrolled to a random spot in Bill's spreadsheet. There's a bunch of tasks clustered together that I can knock out in a single script file. After burning through those, I jumped down the list to knock out another cluster of tasks that I know I can solve in a similar way to the first ones. Next on the list are some that are literally the same thing in different scenarios that I plow through. I keep making my way down the list, and by EOD, I've done 95 tasks. The next day is similar, but I hit a cluster that are a little more involved and only managed to finish 65. Still, that's a little better than the 3 per day Bill asked for. Of course, I've meticulously assigned all of these to myself and marked them done on both Bill's and the task manager's spreadsheets. I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I know Bill has a regular meeting with the PMs on Wednesday mornings. I know the PMs do pay attention to the task manager and check-ins, so they probably took note of the fact that I just knocked half a year off the projection in 2 days. I don't know if they asked Bill why he was wasting my time with this stuff. I don't know if they pointed out that when he asked me to do the same job he did, I did it over 20 times faster than him. All I know is after that meeting, Bill messaged me to go back to doing things the way I was doing them. A couple days later, the head of the department in charge of our team, aka Bill's boss, sent me a message saying from now on, he'll be my lead instead of Bill, and I'll be doing the same job as before, except with more pay and senior in front of my title. So TLDR, I specialize in doing a small number of big tasks. The new lead does a big number of small tasks and claims I'm not pulling my weight. I do more small tasks in 2 days than he did in 6 weeks. I get promoted out from under him. I'm an IT consultant. Customers pay my employer for me or my colleagues to work on their IT systems. It's not cheap, around $1,500 per day, but we're good at what we do. We build by the day, which should technically be an 8-hour shift dedicated to a single customer, though in reality, things are kind of fluid. I might need to email or have a quick meeting with another customer during the day and make the time up elsewhere, etc. All my customers understand this, and they trust me to get their work done / not rip me off. In 8 years, I've never had a complaint. I was midway through an 18-month project with a long-term client. We billed them 2 days a week, which pretty much lined up with the work I was doing for them. The project was progressing nicely, and everyone was happy. Then they hired a new project manager. From the get-go, he was a nightmare and clearly wanted to throw his authority around or show off for his new bosses. He wanted to micromanage all my work, putting in twice daily meetings, constant emails, the works. After a couple of weeks, he decided they weren't getting their money's worth and demanded a detailed breakdown of exactly how my time was being used. Fine by me. I started tracking every single minute. Meetings he scheduled, emails he sent, time spent responding, time spent logging all of this. The bill nearly doubled. His director, who I had a good relationship with, called me directly to ask why costs had suddenly spiked. I explained I was just following the new PM's request for detailed time tracking and regular updates. About 30 minutes later, we got an email saying we could go back to the previous arrangement and that the new guy had been reallocated to another project. A few weeks later, I noticed his account had been disabled. A few years back, I was a team lead in a call center for a bank. Our building was secure, but policy required any personal information for ourselves or customers be locked up along with the obvious things like passwords anytime we weren't at our desks. A separate compliance group would do random desk checks periodically, and violations would result in a write-up for the individual, which also rolled up to leadership. Us team leads were responsible for completing the checks and were frustrated despite our being the ones responsible for the nightly desk checks. One of my peers had the suggestion that no personal information, including photos, knickknacks, that sort of thing, should be allowed out except for the small shelf everyone had in their cubicle. The person making this suggestion was a friend and was one of the closers who had to do these checks on a regular basis. I was not and only had to do these on weekends. I said something to the effect of, "That's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. That's an overcorrection and no one is going to follow the policy and it's just making our jobs more difficult." I was written up the next day by my boss, who wasn't there, as her boss was part of that discussion and wanted me disciplined. I observed nearly no one outside of my team was complying by their ridiculous policy. That Saturday, when it was my turn for desk checks, I wrote a detailed breakdown of every single violation. There were dozens. I kept my feelings on the policy out and stuck to the facts. Monday, I was put on a formal warning. That manager wondered why everyone hated her, wasn't sad when she left, or empathized when she was laid off. I worked for a few years at a branch of JP Morgan in Toronto. It was a total shit show because it was clear our division was going down the drain and would be sold off. The director took a bizarre position on a cost-cutting program that head office had going. They wanted all divisions to cut back on voicemail, network storage, and email storage. So head office had a spreadsheet of the metrics of this cost-cutting. The director laid down the law and wanted deep cuts, so our little division appeared at the top of that spreadsheet. The thing was, I worked on small projects which were often repetitive, so I reused a great deal of information and files from previous projects.
This even included voicemail from clients. This information all had to go. This sounded nuts. I told my manager, who was a real suck-up, never questioned directives. He knew this was a stupid idea, but wouldn't admit it. I took a quick pass on everything. I seldom deleted emails, so this was a good idea. I purged as much as I could. Turns out, I was one of the biggest users, and now they are making this out to be a problem, which my boss pointed out in my quarterly review, only company I knew that had quarterly reviews. They bring up, in a review, my voicemail storage. That was it. I purged all my voicemail, email, and file storage, no local storage. I printed out hundreds of pages until my boss noticed, micromanager, and put a stop to it. Then, new projects came up. They were critical of project planning, and I increased my estimates by 10%, which angered my manager. I stepped him through the steps required. Tell me I'm wrong. No, but you can't do that. Then what do you suggest? Just make it up within the tolerances. Except that it will take me longer, and you know that. I had all the requirements annotated, over 300 pages. That will take time to review. You know this is nuts, so no, why do I need to take the hit on thee? You know this will end up in my quarterly review. I never made it to my next quarterly review. I found a new job. I work as a purchasing manager for a mid-sized home goods retailer. We have used the same domestic importer for our seasonal decor for 5 years. They charge a markup, but they handle the customs, the quality checks, and the shipping. It is hassle-free. My new director of operations is convinced that he is a business genius. He called a meeting last month and lectured me about how we are hemorrhaging money by using a local distributor. He told me to cancel our contract for the holiday shipment and go direct to the source. So I did. I spent a few days on Alibaba compiling a list of legitimate Chinese manufacturing companies that produce glass ornaments. I handed him a spreadsheet with 20 factory contacts, their MOQ, minimum order quantity, and the time zone differences. I sat back and watched this show. He realized that FOB price does not include shipping to our warehouse. He wired money to a supplier, but forgot to hire a customs broker, so the shipment got flagged by CBP. The container sat at the port for 10 days because he didn't understand what an ISF filing was. The demurrage fees, fines for not moving the container, alone cost more than the 15% he was trying to save. He came to my desk yesterday looking incredibly humbled and asked if I still had the phone number for our old importer. TLDR. Boss thought international trade was easy. I let him manage a direct import order, and he ended up paying double in fines and fees. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to get notified for the next story.